Not a single member of my family came to my wedding. My father broke his promise to walk me down the aisle because they all went to my sister's baby shower. The following day, I posted just one photo on Instagram. An hour later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 417 calls and texts. I've always been the odd one out in my family, the understudy to my sister Iris's blockbuster life. Growing up in our suburban Connecticut home, it felt like our family was less a cozy unit and more like a Wall Street trading floor, with my mom Beatrice as the stressed out CEO and Iris as the golden stock everyone bet on. Iris was the star, perfect grades, perfect husband, perfect life. She married Gregory Davenport, a guy whose last name carried the weight of old money, even if their bank account was more smoke and mirrors than actual wealth. Their house had these manicured hedges trimmed into spirals so tight they looked nervous, and their conversations were just as controlled, all about status and appearances. Iris's life was a Broadway show, and my family? They were the investors, clapping like their lives depended on it, hoping for a payout in pride. Me? I was the risky startup they didn't know how to handle. I didn't want the corner office or the country club membership. I wanted Daniel. Daniel's a comic book artist, a guy with ink-stained hands and a quiet intensity that makes my heart skip. His studio, tucked behind our little rented cottage, smells like paper and graphite, like dreams being drawn into existence. To me, that's the scent of possibility. To my family, it was the stench of failure. They saw his ripped jeans and his focus on art, not as passion, but as proof he'd never make it. They couldn't wrap their heads around a life that wasn't measured in promotions or property deeds. When I told them we were engaged, it was like I'd announced I was moving to Mars. Mom gave me her signature look, pained disappointment, like I'd just spilled red wine on her white carpet. "Nina, dear," she'd say, "it's lovely that you found someone creative, but you can't frame creativity and hang it on the wall of a house you'll never afford." Iris was blunter, her fake sympathy sharp as a paper cut. "I just worry about you," she'd say, inspecting her perfect manicure. "It's a tough world without a safety net." The safety net she meant was her trust fund, topped up by Dad whenever Gregory's latest investment sank like a stone. But the real knife twist came when Iris announced her gender reveal party. Same day, same time as my wedding. It wasn't an accident. It was a calculated move, a loyalty test dressed up as a scheduling conflict. And my family, they chose. They picked a promise of a Davenport baby, a cannon blasting pink or blue powder, over my quiet vows in a little ivy-covered chapel. Even Dad, who taught me to read and promised he'd be there, bailed. "I'll slip away from the party for an hour, my girl," he'd said, his eyes so sincere I believed him. Spoiler, he didn't show. That morning, I sat in the chapel's tiny anteroom, my white dress pooling around me, staring at my phone as the texts rolled in. Each one was a polite little stab. "Mom, so sorry, darling. Iris is overwhelmed and needs me. Aunt Clara. Gregory's parents have us cornered. Impossible to leave. And Dad, the final blow. Things are so celebratory here, honey. Your sister's moment is important to us all." Each message was a reminder of my place in the family pecking order. The afterthought, the backup plan, the obligation they could cancel with a quick text. By 3:50 p.m., 10 minutes before the ceremony, I was alone staring at my reflection. A bride with no one to give her away. That's when Mr. Davies found me. He's our landlord, a retired diplomat who lives in the main house by our cottage. He'd stopped by to drop off a gift, a sweet gesture from a man who always seemed to notice more than he said. He saw my phone, the screen lit up with those damning texts, and he didn't ask questions. He just looked at me, then at his crisp suit and said, "Nina, it would be my profound honor to escort you, if you'll permit me." His voice had this quiet authority, like he'd negotiated peace treaties and wasn't about to let a bride walk alone. So there I was, walking down the aisle, not with a dad who'd let me down, but with this kind, dignified man who paid attention when it counted. The wedding was small but warm, like a hug from the universe. Our friends filled the chapel with laughter and love, and Daniel, God, Daniel, his eyes held me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. That was enough, more than enough. After the ceremony, as we mingled with our guests, Mr. Davies pulled us aside. "I overheard a honeymoon wasn't in the cards," he said, his tone gentle but firm. We'd poured our savings into a bigger studio for Daniel's art, so a vacation wasn't even on the radar. "That's a situation that must be rectified," he said, pulling out his phone. He made a quick call. "Jonathan? Davey here. About that young artist I told you about, the one who did your grandfather's journals. He just got married. Yes, a lovely girl." He hung up, a twinkle in his eye. "An old friend, Jonathan Parrish, has a private yacht. He insists you use it for the next 2 weeks as his wedding gift." Jonathan Parrish. The name hit me like a lightning bolt. He's a reclusive philanthropist, a historian who hired Daniel to turn his ancestors' journals into a graphic novel. Daniel had done it for next to nothing because the story gripped him, and he treated it with the same care he gives his own creations. That care, that respect, had earned him something my family couldn't fathom: loyalty from people who value talent over bank accounts. The next day, Daniel and I were on a yacht that looked like it was sculpted from moonlight, sailing into an ocean so blue it felt like a dream. I stood on the deck, champagne in hand, watching the coastline fade, and I felt free, not angry, not bitter, just free. I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo of us, Daniel's hand in mine, the sea stretching endless behind us, and posted it to Instagram. The caption was simple: "The adventure begins." It wasn't a middle finger to my family, It was a declaration. I was done playing their supporting role. I was the lead in my own story now. 15 minutes later, my phone exploded. Calls, texts, notifications piling up like a digital avalanche. By the time we docked 3 days later, there were 417 missed calls and messages. I ignored them all until my mom called, her voice practically vibrating through the phone. I let it ring, savoring the moment, then answered and said nothing, letting the ocean's silence speak for me. Nina? Nina, where are you? We've been beside ourselves. Oh, the performance. She could have won an Oscar for fake concern. I heard Iris in the background hissing, ask her where she got that boat. Who's paying for it? Mom's tone shifted, sharp and interrogating. A yacht like that? Did Daniel's family have money you didn't mention? It would have been helpful to know there it was. Their desperate need to rewrite the story so they weren't the ones who screwed up. They couldn't handle the idea that they'd misjudged Daniel, that their shallow metrics of worth had failed them. They needed him to be a secret millionaire, not an artist whose talent opened doors they couldn't imagine. I took a sip of my drink, watching dolphins dance in the waves. No, Mom, I said, calm as the horizon. Daniel doesn't have a hidden fortune. He has talent and a reputation for excellence. That's worth more than your ledgers can measure. The yacht, it's Jonathan Parrish's. He was moved by Daniel's work and offered it as a wedding gift. Mr. Davies arranged it. The silence on her end was deafening, like her whole worldview just crashed. Mr. Davies, she choked out like she was pronouncing an alien language. Your landlord? Yep, I said, almost cheerful. The man who walked me down the aisle when Dad was too busy with Iris's party. Funny how treating people with respect, no matter their status, pays off. You should try it sometime. Iris's voice cut through, shrill and indignant. This is a setup. She did this to humiliate us. I just smiled. Gotta go, Mom. There's a whale out there, and I don't want to miss it. I hung up, the clean snip of that call cutting the last tie to their world. For years, my family made me feel like I owed them an apology for being me. They looked at Daniel's ink-stained hands and saw a loser, not the man who builds worlds with a pencil. They saw our little cottage and assumed our lives were small. They never imagined that Daniel's quiet brilliance earned him respect from people like Jonathan Parrish, whose worlds make their manicured suburb look like a fishbowl. Those 417 missed calls, they're the ghosts of their mistake. Proof they didn't just skip my wedding, they misread my entire life. Standing on that yacht, the sea breeze in my hair, I realized something profound. By shutting me out, they didn't break me. They set me free. I'm not their afterthought anymore. I'm Nina, sailing into a life bigger than they could ever dream, with a man who loves me for who I am, not who they wanted me to be. And that's the real adventure.